When I was thinking about who might epitomize the intersection of wise and terrific investment management with the Jewish philanthropy, the name that first came to my mind was the AVI CHAI Foundation. I was, and Arthur Freed, its current chair, I was privileged to grow up in Englewood, New Jersey, which was the hometown of Sanford Bernstein, who became Zalman Bernstein. And the AVI CHAI Foundation is one of the philanthropic endeavors that he has undertaken in his life. Arthur Freed is the chairman and CEO of the AVI CHAI Foundation, and it's one of the largest Jewish foundations in North America. I suggested he tell the story about why one person, Zalman Bernstein, would devote what will almost probably be about $1 billion to the world of Jewish philanthropy. Arthur was born in 1941 and was the managing director and CFO of Lehman Brothers, and about the age of 40, he retired to become the CEO of the Rothschild Foundation, Jerusalem, Geneva, a position that he's held until November 1999. In that position, he oversaw, among many things, including the building of the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem, and he funded such creative activities as the Center for Educational Technology and the Open University. After November 1999, he became the chairman and CEO of the Philanthropic Foundation, funded by the estate of Zalman Bernstein, and the AVI CHAI Foundation and the Karen Keshet, the Rainbow Foundation. Mr. Freed earned a bachelor's from Bernard Baruch School of Business and Public Administration in 1963, a JD from Brooklyn Law School, and an MBA from the City University of New York. AVI CHAI is dedicated to the two key purposes: to encourage those of the Jewish faith towards greater commitment to Jewish observance and lifestyle by increasing their understanding, appreciation, and practice of Jewish tradition, customs, and laws. Secondly, to encourage mutual understanding and sensitivity among Jews of different religious backgrounds and commitments to observance. Over his tenure at the AVI CHAI Foundation, many Jewish programs of national and international significance have been funded, including a $100 million program for Jewish day schools, a national teacher training program for Jewish day school teachers, a study on the role of Jewish camping in the lives of developing the next generation of Jews. And he is considered generally a thought leader and programmatic leader in the world of Jewish philanthropy. I'd like to ask Arthur to come up and speak and share with us some of his experiences now.
Good afternoon. I was quite surprised when Jerry Silverman suggested that I be a speaker at your investment institute. Yes, I was a partner at Lehman Brothers when it meant something to be a partner for more than a decade, beginning in 1972, when I was a 31-year-old boy living in Brooklyn. It was eons ago, and I have not been an investment professional since. However, as a philanthropic executive with the Rothschild Foundation until 1999, and since then, as chairman of AVI CHAI, I've thought about investment risk almost every day. Many days, it causes me to break out in a cold sweat. I seek reasonable rewards on our portfolios, and nothing more. We try to hedge our investment risks with appropriate portfolio construction, and have been blessed by good manager selection over the years, with folks like Seth Klarman at Baupost, Paul Singer at Elliott Associates, and others. We own real assets, including a broad portfolio of energy stocks, physical gold, and real estate partnerships. In addition, I chair several investment committees of philanthropies here and in Europe. And when speaking about hedge funds, I've been fortunate to be an equity partner for the past 20 years in Grosvenor Capital Management, one of the oldest and surely one of the most successful fund of funds. Our foundations have significant exposure to emerging markets. Lastly, I've learned far too many lessons from financial crises, beginning in the mid-60s and recurring in every single decade since. But thankfully, folks, I don't have to speak about those subjects. They'll all be attended to in the next 2 days by others far more appropriate to dwell on them than I possibly could be. I'm expected to address the subject of the stewardship of philanthropic foundations and their impact on the Jewish future. I think I can best begin by relating a story told to Lord Rothschild and me, must be 15 or 18 years ago, by Michael Steinhardt, the renowned hedge fund manager, remarkably successful philanthropist, and now a neighbor of mine in Jerusalem. Michael's theme was wealth and how it was displayed going back to the 1950s when we were both teenagers growing up in Brooklyn. Wealth in the 50s was displayed by owning a Cadillac with fins. I'm sure some of you remember a Cadillac with fins. It was followed in the 60s by people from Brooklyn moving to the suburbs, Great Neck, Scarsdale, Harrison. Followed in the 70s by the same people moving back to that diamond circling Central Park, Fifth Avenue, Central Park South, Central Park West. And then in the 80s, it was the beginning of the binge, because people were beginning to make lots of money, the acquisition of art. It hasn't stopped. There'll be auctions next week. The rich will be there. And in the 90s, it was by owning a G4, then a G5, and then I'm sure within the next few years, a G6. And finally, the truest sense of wealth, reaching the pisgah, the Hebrew word for mountaintop or peak, by becoming a philanthropist. Michael then ended his story about wealth, turned to Lord Rothschild, and said, in complete seriousness, Arthur was smart enough to become a philanthropist earlier than most, and has been blessed to do it primarily as a trustee for other people's money. So with that as an introduction, let me tell you about some of the things we do at AVI CHAI, answer some of the questions that Alan suggested, and perhaps deal with them to your full satisfaction. I was first asked why a successful investor and businessman like Zalman Chaim Bernstein of blessed memory would contribute $1 billion or more to foundations dedicated solely to the Jewish people. He didn't leave any wiggle room. That can best be accomplished. I can best answer that question by telling you a bit about the man called Sandy Bernstein. When I first met him in the early 70s, he was a person of passions, many passions. He had a passion for ideas. He had a passion for books. He had a passion for politics. He had a passion for cigars. He had a passion for food. and he had a passion for women. But the one passion that occupied the principal part of his life was a passion for the Jewish people. And he possessed it long before he became a Bal Tshuva, a newly observant Jew. He contributed generously, even before he was a very rich man. But with respect to his Jewish passion, he lived it. He lived it every day. And with respect to his Zionist passion, he fulfilled the dream. He made Aliyah, and he lived with us in Israel almost to his dying day. Well, I would suppose that it's only natural that his number one passion would be his legacy to the Jewish people by virtue of the philanthropies he created. Avichai is the principal foundation to which he donated over $100 million during his life, and then massively endowed through his testamentary plan. But there was another reason why he created Avichai: a passion for the Jews, a willingness to back his passion with money, but also a desire to fill those years after and during his exit from Sanford C. Bernstein and Company with meaning. The willingness to come to the office each morning, roll up his sleeves, and think what he could do to better the lot of the Jews in Israel, in North America, and during the last 10 years since his passing, in the former Soviet Union. Avichai is an unusual foundation. Avichai, it doesn't have a family name. Even the Rothschild Foundation is the Rothschild Foundation. I believe that Avichai is almost sui generis in that regard. And in addition, there are no family members of any trustee, past or present, who can serve on our board, with the exception, of course, of Mem Bernstein. Mr. Bernstein believed in meritocracy. Meritocracy at his business, and meritocracy at his philanthropic enterprises. And from Avichai's first meeting, the foundation's trustees, and there were only 3 of us in those days, were animated by a reach for excellence in how a foundation was to be managed, the effectiveness of its philanthropy, and its selection of trustees. The selection of great trustees, we thought, was the most important aspect of a foundation's stewardship and policy development. We first reached out for Henry Taub. Some of you might know him. Some of you might have heard of him. He was someone with whom Zalman and I worked on Wall Street, and someone who we believed had a sense of how successful philanthropy can best be achieved. A word about Henry. He was one of the 3 founders of automatic data processing, called ADP today. So of course he became quite rich. It wouldn't have been nice to say obscenely rich. In addition, Henry was at the time the president of the Joint, soon to become the chairman of the board of the Technion in Israel. He had his own large family foundation. So it was quite natural that the 2 of us would think about him. And Mr. Bernstein, in his gruff voice, said to me, "I'll call him. I'm closer in age than you are." and Mr. Bernstein called him. Was promptly turned down. That's not the reason I'm telling the story. I went back to explain all the things I said to you, to Henry, on my next visit to New York. The reach for excellence, the concern with how the foundation should be managed, the effectiveness of its philanthropy, and how we could impact on the Jewish world around us. He said yes, joined us, gave us 15 wonderful years of sage advice and total involvement, passion for what we were doing, and concerned about the legacy we would leave. He was followed by others. I believe I should mention each one of them. They have a wide age span. They come from different professions, but they all are concerned with the same passion that Bernstein had. What can we do to ensure the continuity, the uplifting, the importance of the place of Judaism in the Jewish community in North America, Israel, and the former Soviet Union? In Israel, we have 2 PhDs. They just happen to be PhDs. One in philosophy, a member of the philosophy department at the Hebrew University, Meir Buzaglo, the son of the last great Paitan, liturgical poet of the Sephardic tradition. I might need it, Jerry, just wait a second. Then there's Avital Darmon, also a PhD, who's connected with Israel's Academy of Science, where she works to improve the quality of the evaluation of educational achievement in Israel. She is the sister of Don and Salai Meridor. So you can imagine her fine sense of what's right and what's wrong. Here in the United States, we have as a trustee Ruth Weiss, Professor Ruth Weiss, an eloquent, strong, committed supporter of Jews and Israel and the centrality of the state of Israel. She's articulate in her writing, articulate in her speech, and articulate when she sits around the table at an AVI CHAI meeting of what she thinks is the right thing for us to do. Then there are 3 investment professionals: George Rohr, Leif Dov Rosenblatt, and Alan Feld. Rosenblatt is also the chairman of the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst. So he knows, before he even joined us, of important things to the Jewish community. George Rohr is one of the largest contributors to the Chabad movement, responsible for tens of Chabad houses on campuses in this country, and the principal funder, perhaps the only funder, of the Jewish learning experience that Chabad has been so successful with in the past few years. And lastly, the trustee who spends a great deal of time in our office in New York, Lauren Merkin, a remarkable intellect and a fiercely committed Jew. Those are the kinds of people you have to bring together to create a thoughtful, passionate, committed set of trustees who can assure that things will be done well, I might even say successfully. Although we also operate elsewhere, I'd like to speak to you about our philanthropy here in America. It's centered on the enhancement of Jewish day school education and Jewish summer camping. Of course, camping is where we met you, Jerry. We chose those fields because it was felt that by strengthening and empowering the Judaic ambiance, we could make the greatest contribution to the future of Jewish life in America. It is our view, it's backed up by solid research, that the passion and capacity of the emerging, energizing nucleus of the Jewish community, its lay and professional leadership, and its most effective and active members are forged on the anvil of study in Jewish day schools, and those who do not receive a Jewish education can be influenced most, beyond perhaps their families, by a solid Jewish camping experience. You would agree, Jerry, wouldn't you?
No question.
A vote of confidence. Just take the Ramah camps as an example, and their glorious alumni community. But there are other camps with which we work as well, and from which we draw inspiration. Those of the Reform movement, the JCC movement, and independent Jewish camps. AVI CHAI is a foundation that for most of its existence operated with the go-it-alone approach. We internally developed areas of focus and programmatic initiatives that we've been able to launch using our capital, using our talent, using the capabilities as well of existing organizations such as the Pardes Institute in Israel, where they prepared teachers, young, brilliant teachers for the community day school movement. We work with the Jewish Theological Seminary and its Davison School, where we have a leadership development program that has run successfully and touched on the leadership of day schools for the last 12 years. In addition, there's a new teacher center in Santa Cruz that developed a program for us called the Jewish New Leaders. New teachers who are mentored by senior teachers and who are able to get through those first few years without faltering. We've also caused to be established via our support standalone organizations to further our mission and goals. Tel Am is an example in Montreal, a full curriculum, grades 1 to 5 for Jewish day schools and supplementary schools. But now folks, as we look ahead to 2020, when our foundation will sunset, we have realized that a new philanthropic approach is necessary. Let me briefly describe the process we have undergone and the conclusions we've reached. Even before we undertook a foundation-wide effort to plan for our spend down, the 2008 financial crisis required us to reprioritize our philanthropy and to strategically plan how we wish to structure our future activities by developing working groups devoted to teasing out how most effectively we could employ our slightly diminished resources, but much more needed to be done. The process of winding down, spending down, sunsetting a large foundation was new to every member of our board. And it has been a significant challenge because to do so successfully, we have to do more, much more than just develop and support outstanding programs. We therefore needed guidance on how to help transition our grantees to a post-AVI CHAI world. We needed advice on how we could consider our philanthropic approach, reconsider going it alone, as we reorganized within the limited time and funding we have to do the ever more urgent work that we've set for ourselves. In order to learn about how other foundations structured their spend down, what their successes were and what their failures were, we asked Professor Joel Fleischman, the eminent Grease of American philanthropies, to do a literature search and to determine what we might be able to learn from others that preceded us in spending down. He came up dry. There was nothing out there. Nobody did it before. Spend down hundreds of millions of dollars in a 12 or 14-year period. There was something. There was the Belden Foundation that spent $100 million from 90 to 2000. But we were flying alone. And why were we flying alone? Why were we even spending down? We were spending down for two reasons. One, because we truly believed that the needs in the two critical areas that we practiced our philanthropy were so great that we didn't want to be 5% a year spenders. We wanted to do much, much more when we thought we could, we thought we had the capabilities of doing it. And another reason, back to Bernstein, he had a view. His view was that foundations have a drift over the fullness of time from the goals set by the original funder. It made him shake. You think I had a cold sweat about investment risk. Can you imagine worrying about where your money is going to go when it added up to billions? So he suggested, didn't require us, suggested that perhaps his bequests, the money, be spent during the lifetime of those people who knew him, and I think by implication of those people he knew. So what happened with Joel? Well, we asked him to accompany our spend down and to document it, both our successes and our failures. And in this endeavor, he has begun to do so and has provided us with outstanding advice, several strategic recommendations, and we will leave a record for others to follow, perhaps to learn by. You'll be able to find his first-year report, which was conducted in 2009, at the AVI CHAI website, and also at the website of the Terry Stanford School for Public Policy at Duke University, which he was part of founding and funding. Joel, that is. We have learned a great deal, and it's one of the reasons why I'm pleased to be able to speak with you today. We have reconsidered how we work with our existing grantees and have now begun to develop their institutional capacity, including helping them to find donors to replace AVI CHAI over time. Equally important, we've recognized that in order to develop new strategies and programs over the next 9 years, we will need to join with partners who seek to address common challenges and to co-create with them new initiatives. The go-it-alone days are over. We can't make it that way any longer. In this spend-down mode, we hope to engage with other philanthropists, gain a better understanding of their priorities and goals, share with them what AVI CHAI has learned in 25 years of philanthropy. All of the sharing, all of this co-creating, we hope, will be within our mission and will be able to be more successful. By our mission, I mean the enhancement of Jewish learning, including the Hebrew language, of strengthening the Jewish faith and spirituality, and of a commitment to the Jewish people, including the centrality and importance of the State of Israel. We can imagine joining with others on initiatives that narrowly target the special challenges in the national fields of Jewish day school education and summer camping. And we are also interested in engaging with funders who are interested in tackling the broader challenges of the affordability of Jewish life, Hebrew in America, and Israel education. The best solutions might more likely emerge from philanthropists sitting around the table with us, instead of us working on our own, who have experience and commitments to different aspects of Jewish education. We also have significant experience in building Jewish identity in Israel, both in the schools and for adults. We'd be happy to share our experience and together think with others interested in those areas. And lastly, we have a secret weapon at work in the former Soviet Union. It's not a great secret. You can find it out on our website by reading about what David Rosenson has done, where he's reached out in a variety of ways to unaffiliated young adults in the former Soviet Union. Those who are not going to enter a Chabad synagogue, those who have no interest in organized religion, but those who are seeking to understand Jewish and Israeli culture. We do it with a large website that's getting 600,000 hits a month in the Russian language, by publishing tens and tens of books by prominent Jewish authors and on prominent Jewish themes, by learning opportunities in popular clubs in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Anyone who's interested in working in the former Soviet Union, as Harold Grinspoon is now, has to meet David Rosenson. I think you should note his name wherever you Facebook or Twitter or however you keep your records. The most important lesson we've learned as we consider Avichai's sunset in 2020 is that our legacy resides in the hands and the hearts of philanthropists, like many of you are, who will contribute and fund activities long past 2020. We applaud your participation in investment seminars like this, thereby endeavoring to protect, expand, build your resources to in turn maximize your Jewish philanthropy. We wish you all great success, both with your investments and your philanthropy, the latter of which is far more difficult than the former, and I quote the late sainted Joseph Gruss, a well-renowned investor and philanthropist. Thank you for listening to me.